Chess is an absolutely beautiful game, but it can also be extremely heartbreaking. And if you've ever lost a game of chess, then you know what I mean. I just played what must be one of, if not the best game that I've ever played online, but it was also the worst game. It was the most heartbreaking. It was the most tragic. Let's get into it, okay? So I have the white pieces here. I am 1805 at the time of this game. I believe my opponent just below 1700. And we have e4, c5. We have a Sicilian. I play the Alapin here with c3, and I play d4. Now we trade in the center. I get these beautiful pawns in the center here. My opponent plays g6, trying to fianchetto the bishop and attack my d4 pawn here in the center. So I defend with knight f3, you know, just bringing my knights out to their natural developing squares. And this is the opening that you're taught to play when you're just learning how to play chess, right? You take the center, you bring your knights out to c3 and f3, and you develop your pieces, you castle, and you play a game of chess. So that's what we're doing. We have knight f6, bishop c4 gets the bishop out, kind of eyeing the f7 pawn, trying to get some little action going on the board. Now, black castle's absolutely great. I castle as well. Bishop g4 pins my knight to my queen, so I can't move it. This sets up all kinds of tactics, possibly in the future, with the bishop eyeing the d4 pawn and the knight, possibly getting in here. Now, I play bishop e3, which is an inaccuracy because it allows this very interesting sequence of moves with knight takes e4. Well, I don't understand. That just loses a knight. Yeah, but it's like a center fork trick because you get d5 here and you have to drop the bishop back. And sure, material is equal, but it allows black to just kind of trade off a bunch of pieces. Like I have to push the pawn to d5, and now the pawn's a little bit, further than I want it to be right now. And the bishop is really open and black can just trade off a bunch of pieces here. And now I have to worry about defending my d5 pawn. I don't have a light squared bishop to help with that. So I'm going to have to try and get it to d6 at some point, bring the rooks out. And this is just not what I was going for. Now, if we go back, black didn't play that. Instead, black played a6, which is a bit slow and allows me to play h3, kind of kick the bishop. Now, the bishop can go back, or it can not go here, because then it gets trapped with g4. That would be quite sad. So, takes, and knight c6, developing the knight. Okay, rook d1. The idea of rook a to d1 is that I'm x-raying the queen, right? The queen hasn't moved yet. And I want to play e5 and shred open the center, get my rooks to the center, and just try and barrel down. We have b5. This is a blunder. A blunder because of the move that I found, which is e5. Now, my idea with e5 was somewhat wrong, but also somewhat correct. And that's the entire motif of this game, is that I was completely correct, but also wrong. Now, let's see what I mean. e5, the idea was here, and if takes, then I take. And that opens up my rook hitting the queen, and the knight would be under attack. So if that trade happens, black would lose the knight. Now, my bishop is also hanging. There's a lot of tactics going on here, and I just got lost in the calculation. I saw e5, takes. Okay, the queen has to move. Then I take the knight. Okay, then he takes my bishop. Okay, so material's equal there. But then I get to take his bishop, and I win a piece. That looks great. Okay, what about e5? What if he doesn't? Okay, what if he takes my bishop instead? Well, then I take here, and material's equal. And then if he takes the pawn back, because the bishop was under attack, then I get to take the knight on c6, and that's a free knight, and I'm up a piece again. Oh, this is beautiful. Let's play e5. What I failed to notice in the wake of all of the extra calculation I was doing is that after this, I can just take the knight on c6. It's a free knight. And if he takes the bishop, trying to equalize here, then I just take on e5. Now, hitting the queen, and this was the idea I brought up before, right? You have to move the queen, I can trade it, and then take the knight. And I'm just up a piece. I saw a variation of that earlier, but for some reason, after takes, my heart was set on the discovery against the queen. But this just doesn't work. Why doesn't this work? Because of knight takes e5, which is the simplest move. And you see how frustrated I am because this best game I've ever played, but also the worst because of stuff like this happening over the board. This is just bad. It hits my queen. It hits my queen. I just completely missed this. It's just, you hit the queen. So if you take here, you lose because knight takes f3 is a check. So you have to take it back and then you just lose the rook here, and you're down 3 points of material. I believe you're down an exchange and a pawn, and your pawn structure is terrible and you're completely losing. Oh yeah, and your bishop is still hanging, so you have to move that back. So that doesn't work. Instead, I play queen g3. So I blundered a pawn in the center by not taking the free knight when it was handed to me on a silver platter. And so I blundered the pawn in the center. Okay, it's fine. Let's take a deep breath. And let's think for a couple minutes and play queen g3. Now, yes, my bishop on c4 is still hanging. You can't take it because your queen is still under attack. So you have to move the queen, and then I drop the bishop back. Okay, so I'm down a pawn, but I have the bishop pair, and the center is wide open. So I figured I might have a chance here to at least get a draw, right? So I'm like, okay, black blunders. Knight back to d7. Why is this a blunder? Because of f4, which I don't find. Oh, so angry at myself when I analyze this game. f4 just hits the knight, removes the defender. Very simple tactic. You win the knight on d7, right? There's no way around that. Instead, I play bishop f4, thinking, let's pin the knight to the queen and try to set up a knight takes d7 tactic, and the knight won't be able to take back because it's pinned to the queen. Okay, but what happens when the queen just moves? Huh? What happens then? Well, okay, let's take on d7. So I was thrown during this game, right? Because I thought I was doing so well with my calculation in the center when I played e5, but then I blundered the pawn, and I was like, oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. That's definitely the word I was going to say just then. And I thought, you know what? I'm trying to hold a draw, right? I'm trying to hold a draw. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. Kind of looking at, knight takes d7 and bishop f3. This was the whole idea, to skewer the queen and the rook. Because I saw they were on the same diagonal here, and I was trying to go for fancy tactics. And, after this, you win back the exchange that you sacrificed on d7 when you took the knight, and now you're just down a pawn again, and I thought, let's try and hold this worse endgame, right, is kind of my thought. Or I guess this is like a late middle game, but anyway. Instead, what happens is black makes a mistake and takes with the queen. Why is this a mistake? Well, now I get 2 pieces for the rook after all of this, right? Black has 2 rooks. I have 1 rook, so let's cancel that out. So for this rook here, I've got a knight and a bishop. Beautiful for a pawn. But it's still like, this is great. Coming back from the blunder earlier, right? So e6 is terrible. It loses. Why? Knight e4. Boom. Knight e4 on the board. Beautiful. Trying to get into f6. Why on earth did you play e6? That just turns this into Swiss cheese, even worse than it was before. So now, after queen a7, knight f6, and king g7, it is checkmate in 3 moves. And there's 2 different ways to do it. And I thought that I found it, but I also thought that I didn't quite have it, so I played the wrong move. That's just not good. Now, that made no sense just then. Let me show you what I mean. The forced mate is either knight e8, discovered check, or knight h5, double check. They're both double discovered checks, which when I saw this, my jaw literally dropped during this game when I thought I saw mate, because I thought it was beautiful. But for some reason, I psyched myself out of it and thought it wasn't there. Why is that? Well, I saw knight h5, king h6. Then I saw, queen g7, and the king runs. And then I saw, by the way, the bishop would defend the knight here, which is key and also makes it really, really pretty. So I thought I saw knight h5, king h6, queen g7, king g5, queen f6, king runs back, and then queen f4. And for some reason in all of this, I forgot that the knight defends the g7 square. That's what I missed. That was the key. If I had just remembered that in my calculation, I would have saw mate and just ended the game right here. It would have been nice, it would have been beautiful, and the video would end here. But that's not what happened. And also, I overcomplicated it, right? Because the mate is much simpler. It's just, that's the move I played, which is terrible. Instead, knight h5, king h6, you just go queen f4, and the king can't run back, which is what I thought the king was able to do. I saw this, and I thought here, check, here, and we would just be going in a circle. But the king can't go back. So you have to play g5, and this is just checkmate. It's so simple. It's so simple. Come on, Stanley, what are you doing? Oh, man. And knight e8 does the same thing. You go knight e8, king h6, queen here, right? This the h5 square is taken away by the bishop, so you have to play this, and then this is made all the same. 2 different checkmates in 3. I play knight d7 because I just miscalculated. And I thought, okay, let's go for the discovery and try to get a fork. But then there's f6. f6. Now it's still winning for white. You just have to find queen d6. Queen d6, defending the knight. I was worried about the pin, but then there's queen e7 check. And you can't do this, so you lose the rook. Well, then there's this. Yeah, but then you get queen a5, and you're just up a piece here. So that doesn't work. I think it was a piece. I didn't quite analyze that before the video too far. But anyway, we have f6, and I take on e6 because I was worried about the rook coming over here to d8. Also in that variation, when you play this, the king has to run after this check, and then you play rook d1, defend your knight, and it's just going to be pretty bad news for black pretty soon. But instead, I take on e6. I take the pawn on e6, thinking, okay, let's grab a pawn. So now I'm up a point of material, right? And now we have rook e8, which blunders. Why does this blunder? Well, here's the thing. You would normally lose the bishop here, right? Because the knight, I'm kind of like trying to reach my hand in the cookie jar, right? And then there's like a snapping turtle in there ready to take my hand off, right? Because the knight is hanging, or well, not hanging, but like pressured by the queen. So I have to keep an eye on that. But also the bishop is getting x-rayed here through the queen. So I was looking at stuff like, okay, queen g4, but then there's f5, severing the connection between the queen and the knight. So you have to, defend the bishop, right, because of the rook. But then after f5, imagine the queen is here on g4. After f5, and the queen gets kicked to f3, the queen can just take on d7. And that's bad. And I was worried about all of this. I was like, there's no way to keep an eye on the knight and also defend the bishop. But then I was inspired by Bobby Fischer's, I think it was the game of the century, where he, sacrifices the queen for a bunch of pieces. And I saw knight takes f8, which is the best move. Knight takes f8. So that after rook takes e6, you take check. And now you have a rook, a bishop, and a knight for the queen. And all the pawns are symmetrical. This is beautiful. This is winning for white. Also, I'm up on the clock. And I played this perfectly from here on out for the time being. I play knight back, defending the bishop, so that after queen here hitting the knight and the pawn on b2, I'm able to play knight d3, defended by the bishop, so you can't take, and the knight defends the pawn. When you're playing with a bunch of pieces against a queen, you have to create an invincible fortress that the queen, because the queen has no helpers, right? And the queen can't sacrifice herself to win, a piece or something, because I have a bunch of extra pieces that would win me the game after that queen is off the board. So the queen needs targets to be powerful. But if you're able to create a fortress, a3, pawns defended by the knight, knight's defended by the bishop, a3 pawn defended by this pawn, which is defended by the knight defended by the bishop, right? This is how you have to think. You have to create everything defending one another. And I do that, right? Queen down hits the bishop. Well, guess what? Rook e1. Isn't this beautiful? The knight defends the rook, which defends the bishop, which defends the knight, which defends the pawn, which defends the pawn. This is absolutely beautiful. When I was playing this, I was like, oh my goodness, I am going to win this game, and it's going to work out so beautifully, and I'm going to make a YouTube video about it, and I'm going to feel so good. But Tragedy strikes a few moves later. I bring the king over, defend everything. So far, so good. Here, hit the queen, also defended, right? And I'm like, okay, king f1, keep an eye on the bishop. I'm going to slowly expand, right? Slowly try and get something going. I was worried about the queen getting in here, right? Because if you, do nothing about that, let's say just like random moves, and the queen gets in, right? You can easily get checkmated. That's what I was scared of. I was like, ooh, that doesn't look good. I don't want to get checkmated. So I play g3. Now, it's fine to just play like rook c3, and then like f4 is what the computer says. And after takes, you're just sacrificing that pawn to open up the king and remove any kind of counterplay from black. And you're just fine here. There's like no more checks, and you're going to eventually just win pawns. But instead, I play g3, trying to keep the queen out of here. Queen d5. Okay, king g1. Take away any ideas, right? Queen e4. Okay, bishop back. We're gonna keep everything defended here, right? We're chilling. Queen f3. Who cares? Now here, tragedy strikes. I have played a beautiful game. Sure, I missed a few wins. Sure, I made a few mistakes. But all things considered, right? I sacrificed my queen for, 2 rooks with the knight jumping into e8 and then back to, was it f8 to e6 and then bringing it back, creating the fortress exactly how you're supposed to do it. And here it's so simple. It's so simple. All you have to do is play like rook c7, like rook a7. The queen can't do anything. You're just going to bring your pieces in, win either the pawns or just basically checkmate the king. And if the king runs here, then it's just mate in 1 with rook h7, right? So you have to and if this, then just rook takes a6 check and you're forking the king and the queen. So the queen would have to sacrifice here, and this is just completely winning. Of course, you're up a rook and a knight. It's so easy. So easy. But instead, I don't know what happened. I don't know why I did this. But I played rook c6. I played rook c6 in 2 seconds. My opponent takes, spending no time. And I played the best game of my life. And then I did this. And I didn't even get to take the win after sacrificing my queen. I play on for a few moves, but I resign here. It's just game over. This game was absolutely heartbreaking, especially once I did the analysis afterward and I saw everything else that I missed earlier with, the free knight on c6, with, f4 dislodging the knight, and winning on d7 all the same, once the defender is removed. There were so many tactics in this game. My head was spinning. And I guess just by the end of it, I just had a blind spot. And I went rook c6. Well, hey, what are you going to do? If you made it to the end of the video, as always, thank you very much. Make sure you like and subscribe. That helps out a lot. Tells YouTube, hey, this video was pretty good. Let's show it to more people. And check out one of these videos floating around up here somewhere. And have a great rest of your day, guys.